Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. In the previous video, I talked about the observer pattern. Okay, and essentially, the observer pattern was one, which is generally how like a lot of reactivity in different front-end frameworks is done, where the idea is that you're responding to the changing of data. So the idea is you're observing a value, and then when that value changes, any function that has subscribed to that value then runs. So essentially you're triggering functions based on the changing of a value. Now in this video, what I want to do is talk about the event or emitter pattern. The same idea. The idea is you're triggering a function based on something that happens. The difference is that it's not the changing of a value, so it's not a stateful pattern. Okay, so it's not that there's some data in memory that's changing and your app is responding to it. You're responding to sort of arbitrary events. Okay, so have you ever done like you know, basically this kind of pattern is pretty much built into JavaScript and is very, very much how JavaScript works. Okay, so first we'll just kind of show you how it's kind of built in, and then we will, discuss how to create your own event emitter classes. Okay, so let's just create like another, we'll call it emit.html. Okay, and we're just going to create a button. And that button will say click. And then we're going to create a script tag. Okay, and then in here, what we can do is we can save that button in a variable. Const button equals document.querySelector button. Okay, so we're saving that button in a variable. And then you've probably done this in HTML plenty of times, where you basically take a button and you add an event listener. Okay, and the way this is essentially this pattern that works. This pattern has already been implemented. You're just taking advantage of it. So I'm saying, hey, whenever a click event occurs, so basically whenever this button is clicked on, that's going to emit an event. And when that event is heard, when that event happens, I'm registering this function here with that event. So I'm saying, hey, whenever this event happens on this DOM node, okay, run this function, okay, and this function will just, let's say, alert hello. Okay, so now let's just see it at work. But notice it's not responding to data changing. So the difference is that what I'm responding to is something that happened versus something that changed. Okay, so when we're observing something that changes. With event emitters, we're responding to things that have happened. Okay, it's a subtle difference, but otherwise it's the same idea. You're just saying, hey, when this thing happens, either a value changes in the observer pattern or this imperative event happens in an event emitter, I'm responding to that event. Okay, so let's open this up in the browser. Okay. There we go. So we have the button, and I click on it, and see it says hello. Okay, so it's responding to that event. The function doesn't run right away. It runs in response to the event. And again, if you've worked with like DOM events, there's also different events like click, on mouse events, on keyboard press events, all sorts of different types of events. But what if you wanted to create your own custom events? Now, there is a way to build your own custom events into the browser, and I have done other videos on that. Here, what I want to do is just show you how to implement a event emitter from scratch. Okay, and it's going to be very similar to the observer in the previous video. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, actually, I'll do this before we do the whole button thing. We'll create a class, and we'll call the class emitter. Okay. Okay, and then we'll do a constructor. Okay, and pretty much it's kind of giving me the output. So we'll just take a look at what GitHub Copilot gives me right off the bat, because it's pretty much what I was going to build. Okay, so the idea is that kind of like the observer pattern where you subscribe, but instead of subscribing to a value, you're subscribing to an event. So essentially this emitter represents one possible event. Okay, so this constructs the event, which is going to be an array of subscribed functions. Okay, and what's going to happen is that we register functions or subscribe functions with that event, and then whenever that event happens, we just run this emit function. Okay, so for example, if I were to create my own version of the click event, okay, what would happen is, like, let's see here, I'll say const click equals new emitter. Okay, so like basically now I have a new emitter object in this click variable. I want to register my function, so I'll say click.subscribe, and it knows exactly where I'm going. That's pretty sweet. And see, I'm subscribing this function that alerts hello. So the same function we had before. So now here, instead of actually alerting hello, what we need to do is we're just going to emit the event. So see here, I'm going to say, hey, now that I've clicked this button, I'm going to emit the custom event, and then that's going to trigger the subscribe function. Because essentially what happens is that when you emit, the emit function, what it does, it goes through the list of functions that are subscribed and then runs them one by one. Okay, this is one way you could possibly do it. But now, if I go back to the browser and I try this out, I'm going to get the same behavior, even though the code is different. Okay, so again, inside the button click, the formal event listener, I'm not actually doing anything other than emitting the event from my emitter. It's really the function that I have subscribed with my custom emitter that's running when I click the button. Okay, so now one possible deal with this is that, one way we could possibly improve upon this is that hey, wait a second. Well, when I do this, okay, this is going to all functions subscribe to the one event. So for every different type of event I would want, I'd have to create a separate emitter, which may be fine. That might be exactly what you want. What if I just wanted to create one emitter that could handle multiple types of events? Okay, so we might do something like this, where basically instead of passing in just a subscriber function, okay, we'll still call it the subscriber, okay, but instead the subscribers are going to be an object, okay. I will call this like this dot events, okay. And then what's going to happen is that we're actually going to say, hey, this is going to be an object that brings in two things: the name of the event and the callback. Okay. So essentially, what we're going to say is we're going to take a look and say, hey, okay, wow, it really knows what I'm trying to do. That's pretty awesome. This is, again, GitHub Copilot. Just totally predicted where I'm going with this. Okay. So essentially, first I'm going to check, hey, does a event by this name already exist in the this.events object? If it doesn't exist, so you see he creates a blank array for that event. Okay. So that way, again, if I don't have a listing for that particular event, it'll just create it. And then what it's going to do is then push the callback into the array for that particular event. Okay. And then, what's it doing there? Return unsubscribe this.events.name splice -1. Let me just see here what this extra code here is doing. I think you're using the same function to unsubscribe the event. I think that's what they're doing here. So let's see here. This.events.name.length -1. So index equals this event's name.length -1, because that would get the index of it currently. Oh, okay, you're returning an unsubscribe function. I see. Okay, so what it's doing is returning an object with an unsubscribe function in case you wanted to unsubscribe that particular event. So that's what that's doing. I wasn't planning to do that, but that's a nice touch. Okay. So that way, because oftentimes it's hard to unsubscribe a function because all functions are unique. So it's not like I can just sit there and say, hey, like, you'd have to use that function object, and it's you either have to pass that same function object in order to do like a find and find that value. So in this case, look, the easier path is just to give you a function that's already built to unsubscribe that particular function. Okay, not particularly important for what I'm saying right now, but yes, that's a nice touch. Okay. But you see, now I can have multiple different types of events here. Okay, and then basically what's going to happen here is that what we'll do is we'll say, hey, we're going to pass in an object that's going to have the name of the event and data. Perfect, exact. How is that? This thing's like reading my mind. It's pretty awesome. Because we're going to improve in two different ways. Now, not only can I emit multiple types of events, but I'm also want to be able to pass data to the event in case I want to actually like pass data that event may rely on or depend on. Okay. So then what would happen is that it would say, okay, right on the money. It'll first check, hey, is there an array of events that matches that particular event name? Okay, if so, it's going to loop through all the functions in that array, and then run their individual callback. Okay. Yep, and then run that callback and pass it the data, and then that works. Okay, so now what I can do, so when I click create that new emitter, this will just be called events, right? Okay, and then maybe what I'll do is I'll say, hey, events.subscribe. Okay, and then here's showing me sort of one example. The name of the event is click. Okay, callback is click. Okay, and then I'll create another one. Although I think I'm missing a curly bracket there. Yeah, I think I am missing a curly bracket here. Oh, I see. That's where the callback ends. So that should be really get rid of that. There we go, and then there we go. That still doesn't seem to fit right. Oh, I see. I need another curly bracket. There we go. Okay. Cool. So I subscribe one event. Let's subscribe a second event. And we'll just call this event Bob. Okay, and then Bob, we'll register an event that says Bob. Okay. So now here, what I'm doing is I'm going to emit, and then again, this callback will receive data. So let's just pass data into these callbacks. Okay, and then we'll also pass the data. So you can see that it's receiving it. Okay. And we're going to say, hey, I'm calling the event called Bob, or click, and then the data I want to pass an object. So just that. Name hello. Okay. And so basically I'd emit the event this way. I'm saying, hey, I want to emit the click event, and I want to pass any subscribers to that event this data. Okay. And now if I do that, so this is kind of like how you get the event object, because under the hood, what's happening is that, when you emit something like the click event or any kind of DOM event, it's actually generating an object that you probably know as the event object and passing it to the emission of that object. It's actually nested within the implementation of the actual emission of events inside the browser API. Okay, the creation of those event objects. Okay, but let's see here. I do that. Let's go check it and then take a look at the console. Now if I click is not defined. Oh wait, because I'm still using click over here. This should be events.emit. There we go. And notice, see, I only got the click event, got console log, not Bob. Okay, so now I'm going to click and create another button, which we'll call Bob. Okay, or actually we'll call it a div. I would just say Bob. Okay, and then we're going to say const Bob equals document query. Okay, so it knows exactly that I want to grab that div, and it knows exactly what I want to do. I want to create. It's pretty, I must say, GitHub Copilot really can read your mind, especially in JavaScript. Okay, and basically I want to create that click event that triggers a Bob event. Okay, so now if I click on Bob, see I just get the Bob event emitting when I click on here. And that's basically how event emitter works. That's all it is. This is basically something happens that causes the event to be emitted, and when that event is emitted, the subscribing functions run. Literally like the observer panel, but except instead of observing a value and responding when it changes, it's responding to just some sort of non-stateful event. That's it. Otherwise, it's all still event-based development. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Have a great day and enjoy.